All right, welcome to the party, pals. GRC Mafia. I see B-Dubs popping in chat, beating 8-bit to the game here. I also see Jason popping in as well. Welcome to the party, pal. And Jeffrey, GRC Mafia. So right out the gate, we're here to break down barriers, foster collaboration and community, working towards a more secure future for everybody. Definitely a learning and growing environment. During these streams in particular, typically I won't drop the stage link itself, but you're more than welcome to ask, and I will provide that to you. I want people to at least have the ability to come up and talk, engage, and so forth directly as well. If you do come up, you do not have to turn on your video. You could just use your microphone. Certainly ask questions along the way, even if it doesn't pertain to what we're talking about at the time. Worst case scenario, we could circle back around to that. Now, if you'd like to share your social media profiles or otherwise for your own accounts, the best place to do that is actually inside of our Discord server. So if I'm dropping the link in chat right now, you can join our Discord server, head on over to the live chat channel, and you could drop your LinkedIn, your Facebook, or whatever else in chat, and it'll actually relay that to the other platforms as well. Welcome to the party, pal, Jason. Illuminati. That's hilarious. And then also share useful resources along the way too. What are you guys working on, and so forth. So that's one of the awesome things about community is we're all kind of working on different areas, different domains within the realm, and that really gives us a great perspective overall. Don't share anything that you don't want to be public. If you happen to do so, definitely reach out to me on Discord or LinkedIn. You can also contact me at contact@studygrc.org. And then also, you guys may be familiar with B-Dubs. If you're not, B-Dubs is not only doing the CISSP study group on Tuesdays and Saturdays, which is 100% free, available for everybody from, entry level upwards, including, studying for the CISSP itself especially, but also publishing a blog article every single Monday as well. Rania popping in, GRC Mafia. And then also we have our website. So that's where you can go for the rest of the platforms we stream to. We also have our calendar and then also our resources page there too. I'm hoping to reorganize that resources page and provide way more resources on that here in the near future. But also that calendar is going to provide you the most up-to-date information. One of the big key things to mention as well is tomorrow is our primary meeting at 6 p.m. Central Time. We'll have Evan coming up doing a presentation for cybersecurity on a shoestring, how to, upskill on a budget. Bunch of resources, awesome guy. And then without further ado, let me see. So I'm going to go ahead and transition over here. Today we are talking about DNS. And so I'm going to go through a quick presentation for it and just talk a little bit about what it actually does and why it's important. Thankfully, I feel like DNS is pretty straightforward. If you guys have questions, definitely drop those. But it should go pretty smoothly here. And then what I'll do is I'll actually pull up NextDNS, which is a free service that you guys can implement today that will actually significantly increase your privacy and security for your traffic. And it's a pretty quick and easy setup. Welcome to the party, pal, Josh. All right, bam. I'm gonna go ahead and take this Discord QR code down. All right, and like I said, this is gonna be pretty quick and easy. So what is DNS? DNS stands for Domain Name Service. What it does is it allows you to type in studygrc.org and not have to know the actual IP address or address information for the server that the website is stored on. And that's really what it comes down to for the most part. There's a couple other different areas of DNS as well, but in the simplest form, that's really what it does, is it just makes it to where we could type in youtube.com and go to youtube.com. Not having to memorize the different IP addresses that are associated with that, with the numbers, whatever else. It gets even more complicated if you're then utilizing IPv6 and so forth. And that's also what it marks here for its importance. It's just way easier to work with. It's kind of like with a phone book where you're looking up somebody's name in order to get their number. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't think I've even memorized a phone number in the last 10 years. So yeah, I do remember it back in the day when we did memorize phone numbers, though. At one point, I probably had about 20 different numbers or more memorized. So why DNS matters, user friendliness. It supports multiple different types of services as well. So it's more than just web browsing, but there's also like email delivery and so forth. This could also be easier for networks, especially in the enterprise. You can have a client portal or a employee portal and so forth. Enhances reliability. So this is a distributed system. I don't know if I would really call it decentralized at all. I don't think that is a fair term, but you could run your own DNS server relatively easy as well. I'm not going to cover that today, but one of the key aspects of this is no single point of failure. So like one of the different services is Cloudflare, which is pretty easy to set up. And, even if that fails, then there's still another service. So if there's a horrible disaster that takes out an entire country per se, then there's plenty of different failovers. Jason says we only had to memorize 7 digits too before area codes. Yeah. Well, and that's what I did. Is everybody I knew, we had the area codes and so forth, but there was only one for the area I was in, so everybody had the same area code, and we didn't have to even know the area code. B-Dub says that she has all of her family members' cell phone numbers memorized. That's a little sus. I mean, that's not a bad thing, but anybody else memorize phone numbers these days? And then also, I think it was Josh so Josh mentions that they really only know theirs. Yeah, to be honest, like I have to actually like recall mine all the time. Some of the historical context here, so like the background, it did start forming out in the 1970s when a lot of this different technology did come about to map to the IP addresses. And then one of the key highlights here is the standardization in 1987. So there's 2 different documents here, and I skimmed over these the other day. So RFC 1034 and 1035, that is what establishes the standard for DNS. And that's been since 1987. At least to the best of my knowledge, I don't believe the technology itself has really advanced that much since. It's been optimized a little bit with a cache and so forth. But in large part, it's really maintained pretty similar to what it was back in the day. And that's also what brings us to this side. So DNS cache itself, what it does is when you visit studygrc.org, it will actually save that in a cache, whether that's on the DNS server itself, but then also on your own device as well, just so that way it could recall that. Usually it has a time to live, a TTL, which dictates, this information is good for 72 hours or 30 days or 14 days or whatever it is. Also, some of the security considerations. One of the big reasons why, now, especially when you're looking at red teaming, you definitely have spoofing, cache poisoning, all kinds of different issues with that. You definitely want to limit access to your host file on your system, but then also, from a privacy standpoint, especially. So when you type in studygrc.org, typically, if you're not using an encrypted form, because standard DNS does not typically go over encryption at all, it's not using HTTPS for TLS or anything like that. And that's one of the big reasons why I really want to kind of share this information and how easy it is to set that up, because my understanding, I've talked to individuals who worked for ISPs in the past. I mean, this was like 5 years ago, but it's definitely still true today, because when you type in a website address, typically your default DNS server is owned by your internet service provider, the person who you're actually purchasing your internet from. That's not typically an issue, you would think, except for the fact that then you have that issue with eavesdropping, because then they can see what websites you're going to, when you're going to them, and so forth. And they could take that information, they could use it for multiple purposes, and that's when we start getting into the privacy side of this as well. With the ISP, I wouldn't be so much concerned about the security end. Personally, I'm more concerned about the privacy side of it. So that's definitely one of the big reasons here. There's also DNSSEC, which is also attached to the domain itself for the integrity. That is kind of similar to, what is it, DMARC as well. Oh, welcome to the party, pal, Albright. Yeah, AI is definitely getting somewhere with these images, right? And then some of the modern enhancements. So nowadays, we have multiple different abilities with the DNS. So this is some of the different more recent changes where now we can actually call DNS over HTTPS, which is what most websites are now, which goes over encryption with TLS, which that increases the level of security there. One of the other benefits, and so that's when we get into DOT and DOH, which is two different types. I'll go through that here in a moment on those two different types. But then also, you also have, so there's, man, now I'm getting confused between the two. But now you can actually go through and you could request your DNS. So when you type in studygrc.org, it gets encrypted during its travel time, data in transit, and your ISP shouldn't be able to see that. Now, if your device is compromised or otherwise, there's also an entire concept about store now, decrypt later as well, which is also a concern, especially in the privacy realm. But still, I definitely prefer to run a separate DNS that I know is encrypted, especially a service that has been independently audited and so forth, or even running my own over utilizing my internet service providers. Let me double check chat here. And then this is just pretty much the conclusion. I'm going to leave that up for a moment. I'm going to double check chat here. Let's see here. BDub still remembers my old landline as a kid. Man, I do remember my very first phone number, but I do not remember our landline at all. I do not have that great of memory. Let's see. I was considering on getting a landline again, actually. Lois is new here, and I feel I've missed a lot. Is there a way to know what has already been taught for the beginning of GRC? That is a very broad question. We have covered so many different things. We have well over 100 videos. GRC is a absolutely massive domain, and there's so much that encompasses that. One of the different key things that I would tell you is that if you have questions, definitely ask them. That's one of the biggest things about our community is just the fact of support along the way. There's also so many different job roles throughout it as well. So if I don't know something, I'm positive somebody else in the community does. That's how broad it is. And then also we do have this playlist here I'm going to drop in chat, which we curated for individuals who are interested in GRC, but don't quite have a complete understanding of what GRC is and just some of the fundamentals of it as well. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that. So take a look at that playlist there. Let us know if you have any questions along the way. Mondays and Tuesdays, we have our GRC hands-on. And starting next Monday, we're going to be doing the policy development, where we're going to be reviewing policies. And then on Wednesdays, we have the GRC Let's Get Technical, which is today, where we cover some of the more technical side of things. And then we're going to start doing the labs. On Thursday nights is actually our primary weekly meeting. We were originally meeting on Thursday nights before we bolted on these other days, streaming 5 days a week. Definitely that primary meeting on Thursday nights is the big one. And then on Fridays, we have our AMA as well. And check out studygrc.org. We have a ton of resources on there. There's free courses available. There's book recommendations and more. And there's a bunch of other communities too. I'm going to catch up on chat here before I continue, and then we'll do that NextDNS, which is pretty straightforward. And then also I'll explain for Cloudflare, because I actually did use Cloudflare, and I sometimes still do use it, especially in a pinch. Let's see. Yeah, and 8-bit's also right there with me. I don't remember anything these days. Yeah, like I've legitimately had to like fill out paperwork and had to look up my own number on my phone. So I would be helpless if my mobile device did not work. On the upside, I do have backups of contact lists and everything else, though. Welcome to the party, pal, Cyber Gangster Cybersecurity. All right. Yeah, and Jeffrey mentions the first landline as well. Yeah, I remember having a landline. I'm just old enough to where I also remember to where we could either use the landline or we could use the internet. And it was right during that transition there. Yeah, and exactly like Cyber Gangster says, is you ask and there's many folks very willing to help. Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty confident on the ability to find somebody. That's one of the things I'm actually really happy about, is that within the community, whether it be Study GRC or even if we need to reach out to the Simply Cyber side of things, there's somebody out there who can answer. So having to change their phone number and deal with MFA, I was wondering how much of a pain that would be to change my cell number. I was considering on updating my phone number just because I've had my existing one for probably 7 years now. But it honestly is such a pain, because also like one of the other issues is that at least with Verizon, you go through and you can change your phone number, but then unless you add a phone number on, then you lose the original one immediately. And so obviously that is definitely a problem. The only way that I've been able to figure it out is like with a lot of the newer devices, you can add more than one phone number. So thanks to the digital SIMs, in which case you can have 2 phone numbers on the same device for a short period of time, and then you could cancel your original phone number after you get the MFA converted over to the new phone number. Although I will also state that I really have tried not setting up mobile, text MFA before, unless I have to. So I've converted over to security keys, which I feel is way, way better. I do not have very much trust in SMS for the authentication codes. But that's also me because, paranoia. Assume compromise. Yeah, 8-bit's just hanging on with his wife's memory there. Jason, his grandparents had a rotatory phone. I think my grandparents did have one, but I don't think it worked. I don't think it was like actually connected at all. Yeah, and like B-Dubs is saying, good luck, all right. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. Yeah, and so like Josh mentions is decouple MFA from your phone wherever possible. That's what I was just saying, is that I personally do not use SMS for authentication codes. unless I absolutely have to. And the reason why is just because there are methods to compromise that. And it's way easier than with a security key or even like Josh mentions an authenticator app. So if you have the ability to even use an authenticator app, that is still more secure than using SMS. And like Chef mentions is tokenization. I ended up, I don't know, probably 6 months, 8 months, a year ago, went off and got the Yuba keys. I got 2 of them for like $85. And I mean, it makes it a lot easier, to be honest. It is kind of a pain when you have to touch the device itself to log in. But overall, it's actually made it pretty easy after I've converted over. The biggest pain is when I bolt on a new service and then I have to add both security keys one at a time to that service. It's kind of a pain as well. Yeah, and Jeffrey was using Google Voice. That is like so fishy. Come on, Jeffrey. No. I could see utilizing Google Voice here and there. Ryan mentions rotary phone. Accidentally dialed 911 instead of 311 once. Wow. Yeah, I could see that being way easier to with a rotary phone. Yeah, and later this month, we will also be covering password managers as well, because that's another really important one. If you're not already using a password manager, you really should. However, I do not save my OTP in my password managers. The reason why is because I do not want a single point of compromise. So yeah, to each their own. That's one of the big reasons why I converted over to a security key, is because I would say 95% of the services I utilize do support a security key, in which case I need my my username, my password, and then I also have to authenticate with my security key. And then like if I leave the house, I take that key with me. The downside is you always want to have at least 2 or more that are set up with those exact same services as well. So that way, if you do lose one, then you're not completely screwed, locked out forever. Albright mentions I used a password manager, so I guess I just got to look up how to use it for MFA. Yeah, and I mean, to each their own with putting the codes into a password manager. They are set up for that. At least that is encrypted. But I still prefer not to. Yeah, I mean, and so like Josh had mentioned an authenticator app. If I didn't use security keys before I used security keys, I had my password manager with my username and password, and then I had a authenticator app on my cell phone for those codes, just so that way there was that separation. So that way, if my actual computer got compromised, then they wouldn't get access to the password manager or otherwise, and it wasn't a single point. I forget which one. There's a really good open source authenticator. I forget what the name of it is. I'm looking it up right now because there was a really good mobile authenticator, because Google and Microsoft have theirs, but I just don't prefer that. Maybe you guys drop it in chat there. Worst case scenario, I'll look it up at the end here. It might have been Authy app, which is what Chef mentions, because there was a free open source one that I used, and I prefer to use open source than Google or Microsoft. But yeah, so coming back to the topic here, translates the names like studygrc.org into the IP addresses. So when you click enter for a domain, it sends that request to a DNS server, which typically you have a default for your internet service provider. And then it responds and it says, oh yeah, here you go. This is the server that you want to connect to, that you want to send your request to. It enables global connection. It just makes the whole process way easier. It works behind the scenes. A lot of people never even realize that it's even happening. So for an example, I not only I use NextDNS on part of my network, but I also have a PiHole, which is for ad block and so forth on that DNS level. And like just the majority of my devices sends over 300,000 requests a month. And I don't feel that's really that excessive. And then also it evolved with the internet. So, I mean, it's been around for a very long time, and it's just one of those very basic portions of the internet itself. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull up this other tab here. And I'm going to go ahead and show an example of NextDNS. One of the first things that I did want to mention, though, too, I'm going to show NextDNS here in just a second, but then also there's another one that's called Cloudflare. And I'm going to go ahead and swap over to this page here. All right. And so Cloudflare does run multiple different DNS. And so what this means is it says what is 1.1.1.1. So if I'm in a pinch, if I'm working on a family member's computer or whatever, or I'm setting it up for them, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the default to 1.1.1.1. And the reason why is because I feel that's better than using your internet service providers. And there are multiple different methods around this as well. One of the really cool things is you can actually download the Cloudflare app on your phone. But also, if you look inside of your cell phone settings here, you should be able to search for DNS. And then you'll see something. So at least on Android, you'll see a section here that says private DNS. And you can actually go in there and you can configure that. You can set your private DNS. It's probably different for Apple especially, but you can change that to 1.1.1.1. And that's the DNS resolver, like it's saying right here. And so what it does is instead of sending it to the default for whatever network you're connected to, it's going to send it to Cloudflare. And Cloudflare has been vetted before. They've gone through security audits before. They have a no log policy. And so I do find this to be a very quick and safer method than just your defaults. There are some other different areas around this too. I believe that there's also 1.1.1.2, which is the family safe one, which blocks out those adult websites and some of the stuff like that as well. So there's different ones that you can connect to through there. And that's how simple and easy that is. Also inside of your browser, at least with Brave browser and some of the other ones, like Firefox, you can go into the settings of your browser. You can look, you can just search for in the settings for DNS. And most of the time you can go through and change it to custom and select Cloudflare, or you can type in 1.1.1.1. Also on your Windows computer, at least. So if you're running Windows 11, you can install the app for this as well. NextDNS also includes an app, but you can also just open up your settings and type in DNS, and then you can go in there. You'll go into whatever network you're connected to, and then you can go ahead and edit those settings and change the default DNS itself. If anybody ever has any questions regarding that, you could definitely drop that in Discord or otherwise. I'm going to show some of the different options here as well, but it really is that simple. This is like maybe a 3-minute process. And then the best thing to do is actually on your router itself, which might be a little bit more technical than what some of you may be used to, but you can typically log into your actual router itself. If you look for the sticker on your router, typically you have a username and a password, and it'll say something like 192.168.1.1. And you would actually type in that address on your computer, and then you would be able to use that login information for the admin and password that's on the sticker in order to sign into the admin account. And then inside, each router is different, but if you were to sign into your router and modify the DNS settings, then that would account for all of the devices on that network. Yeah, and also CyberCycle mentions that Cloudflare was rated the fastest. And that is an important thing to note too, is that some people go over to Cloudflare's 1.1.1.1 just because of how quick it is. I think it's like some crazy number, like 12 milliseconds or something. So Jeffrey asked about AdGuard Home. I've used AdGuard before. I don't have anything bad to say about it. I think it's a great service. You could also, I think they do have a paid edition, but you can do a large majority of it for free as well. And they have like a community version. So one of the big different things between AdGuard and NextDNS is AdGuard has more customization options. If you want a more home lab, you can also opt for PiHole, which is very similar to AdGuard, but it's open source. It runs off of a Raspberry Pi or a Linux server, and it can be a local DNS. Yeah, then you actually maintain that data on site, and you're not even sending your requests over the internet. Technically, then your PiHole is communicating to another DNS outside, but you can set up cache, you can make sure it's encrypted, all of this different stuff. So like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes in with that, but I think AdGuard Home is way better than nothing at all. Yeah, Josh says 300K a month. That's obsessive. It's honestly more than that. I'll actually, I'm not going to show you guys, but because that's one of the things I've been concerned about is with some of these different hands-on, I have to be careful not to dox myself out. But yeah, so right now in the last 30 days, my DNS queries is at 577,000. So it's closing in on 600K DNS requests in the last 30 days. So, and I have a 62% block rate. So that means that 62% of the requests that my device makes has been denied. And that means that those requests were on my filtered list. So that blocks ads, that blocks tracking, that blocks all kinds of different stuff. And I'll show you more of that in just a moment here too. Let's see, which is why I like the NextDNS portion. But so definitely look at Cloudflare. They even have a mobile app so you can quickly do it. Or you can just go into your settings on your phone, search for DNS, and you can customize those as well. It's the exact same thing on your computer. You can just go to your computer settings, search for DNS. You have to open up the network that you're connected to, settings, and then you change the DNS server. So AdGuard is like NextDNS, except I would say NextGuard is more customizable. So in order of customization and control, I would say you have PiHole that is most customizable and complete on whatever you want to do. And then you have AdGuard, and then at the very bottom, you have NextDNS. The reason I do root for NextDNS is because of how simplistic it is. They do have a no log policy. They've had independent audits and so forth, and it literally takes minutes to set up. And so just because of the ease of use, a lot of users just don't do this because of the barriers to do so. So as a starting point, using something like NextDNS, which only takes a few minutes, is better than not using anything at all. Welcome to the party, pal, Vince. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this up here. And then I'm going to go over here for a moment. So I'm going to pull this up for a second. I'll show you guys along the steps, but you guys should be able to see this. Yep, perfect. Let me go ahead and take that off for a second, and then I'll catch up on chat here in a moment. But so we have the NextDNS website here. I'm going to drop it in chat. And so really all you have to do is you just come to nextdns.io, and then you do try it now. Now I'm going to do my absolute best on these labs to not dox myself here. So I'm just clicking on the try it now button that's on that page. And then I just want to verify. All right, perfect. and then I clicked on try it now. And so this is one of the awesome things about NextDNS is that you get a free 7-day trial. And so now it's made me a temporary account. And you could see here that it's still identifying that I am connected to a NextDNS because of how I have my system set up, because I have a custom DNS configured. Now, when you come to this page, this is literally the next page that you see after you hit on try it now. And it says up here that you have 7-day free trial. And that's one of the awesome things. And then if you choose to, so you can continue to access this dashboard from the same device for up to 7 days, as long as you don't clear out your history and cache and so forth. But you can also click on sign up, and then you can associate this account or this dashboard with a actual login. I personally would probably just sign up just in case, and then you can also access it for more than just one device. But so like right off the bat, it's going to give you these walkthroughs down here, which is what I love. Is so, oh, we have a Windows device. All right, well, how do I connect to this service on a Windows device? Well, it gives you a step-by-step on you open up your network, your Wi-Fi or Ethernet, you click on hardware properties, and then you go ahead and set the servers, the DNS servers, to these numbers here. Now, what I will also state is it does give these IP addresses here for the preferred, but then it also does state to select manual template and enter this here. And so if we look back up here at the top, we have multiple different options. So standard would be over the IP addresses for the DNS servers. And this is where you get DNS over TLS and then DNS over HTTPS. I did like a deep dive on this before. This is what I was getting confused with earlier when I mentioned both of them. So that is DOT and then DOH. So DNS over TLS, and then there's DNS over HTTPS. Both of those are encrypted. Both of those should not be able to be eavesdropped on or otherwise. One of the big key differences is DNS over TLS may have more security to some extent, but DNS over HTTPS can also be more private. And that's one of the big key differences. There's not really a big difference between the two. There's a very, very medial difference in speed between the two. But DNS over HTTPS, which is, if we use this right here, so you could see on the left-hand side, DNS over HTTPS is going to be right here. And you could see that it's like a website that we put in. And so like on your mobile device, if you have a device that's, you know, more than 3 or 4 years older, then you can go into your settings and you can set that as your DNS server, and it will communicate and send those requests over HTTPS. I do recommend that for the privacy aspect, because then whatever network you're connected to, they can't really, it's much harder for them to tell that, oh, these are DNS requests that are being sent out. Whereas if you were to connect to the TLS over TLS or the IP addresses, then it's a lot easier to identify that traffic. And although it's encrypted, it's going to be more difficult for them to associate that with the DNS request. So that's like one of the main differences. I hope I'm explaining that okay. Let's see, and then I'll double check chat again here in a moment. And honestly, I don't even screw with IPv6. I actually have that completely disabled on my systems and everything else. I'll worry about that in 10 years. And then you have these other devices too. So like for Android, it walks you through step by step. This is how you do it. Settings, network and internet, advanced, private DNS, like I was mentioning a moment ago. And this is what I love so much about NextDNS, is that it makes it so easy. And if you do not want to do this, you could just download this on your, just search up the NextDNS app and sign into your account that you made, and you're good to go. But now the other key thing here is that this isn't the end. So after you set the DNS server up, that you're not done. I'm going to transition back over to this page for a moment, just to double check. But so one of the other big benefits here is now if we click on security over here, this is where the benefits show, because now we can leverage NextDNS's threat intelligence. They even have AI-driven threat detection on phishing attacks, on spoofing, on all kinds of different stuff that just doesn't look right. We can force Google safe browsing. We could enable cryptojacking protection, and none of this stuff is 100%, but what it is better than nothing. So DNS rebinding protection is another big one. So prevent attackers from taking control of your local devices through the internet by automatically blocking DNS responses containing private IP addresses. So there's a bunch of different settings in here. They could even attempt to prevent typo squatting protections and so forth. And I personally, when I do go through and use this service, I have all of these marked out, including park domains. You can also block top-level domains. So like if we click on this, add a TLD, then we can also go through and we could block. They have this list of 10 or so of the most commonly associated with phishing or otherwise domains. And so that means if I add this .work to my list, I will not be able to access a .work website or a .review website or a .fit website in association with, .com. So if I were to select .com here, then I wouldn't be able to access .com websites, which would obviously hinder like 90% of the internet. But for an example, I don't visit .work, I don't visit .fit, I don't visit .review, and these Chinese characters or otherwise, I'm not visiting those websites. So I'm probably going to add that to my list here as well. A lot of really good, awesome stuff. And this is where it showcases that, and they have a security and a privacy section here that I'm going to show in a moment. But then this is where that security and privacy comes in. Not only do you get these security features, but then also on top of that, you also get all kinds of privacy here as well. So with the privacy section, this is where it gets a little bit more difficult, I would say, because I feel like this is where they could do a better job. So the block list, this is your filters. This is where you go in and this is where NextDNS also fails, I believe, is with NextDNS, you cannot add your own block filters through here. So I personally have a list of maybe 15 or 20 different community built block lists for ads, tracking, privacy, and so forth that I utilize on my PiHole. On here, they do have a list of them. So if I click on here, so add a block list, you could see here that, oh, I want to filter by popularity, which is awesome. But they don't have that many. I wouldn't say they have maybe 20 options or so in here, maybe a little bit more. But one of the biggest downsides here is the fact that it's not customizable. And then also by default, the only thing selected is ads and trackers. Now I'm going to go through and identify some of the ones that I know I use. So you can see here, NextDNS ads and trackers block list. I'm going to add on that DNS filter. I do not use OISD. Now, if you have issues with mobile ads, then maybe you want to go ahead and add that on. Now, this is also where I'll get into a moment that you have to tailor this later as well. Another one that I use, Stevens Black. So you can see here that this was updated a day ago, which is one of the other key things that I would keep an eye on as well, is how often has it been updated? Because there's some on here that have been years. And so Goodbye Ads is another really good one that I've used. Steven Black is one that I use. I don't use the Easy Privacy, I don't believe. The Fanboys Annoyance list was updated 2 minutes ago. And so that's another one I use. There's even this NSA block list, which is a collection of servers that were identified to be 3-letter agencies for spying through multiple data breaches and so forth, and whistleblowing. You can add that. I've never actually had that pop up as being blocked at all. So then this is where it gets complicated, because like you may be thinking like, oh, I'll just add them all on here. But then you're going to break the internet. You're going to break it to where nothing is going to work. So I would start out by just adding a couple in here. Definitely make sure that they were updated somewhat recently. You could see this one was updated a year ago. Another one that I do use here too is this I don't think it's the Multi-Pro. I think it's the Pro Plus Plus is the one I use. Someone Who Cares is also another really good one that's very carefully. This was updated 13 days ago. And this is actually a really quality one. And there's multiple different things here, but I would start out by just adding a couple of them here. Maybe you have a smart TV on that network and you want to block those. But yeah, just add a couple on, see how it works. If you come across an issue, I'll show you how you fix that in a moment. So, and then also down here at the bottom, then you even get like language-based filters as well. Now, one of the other awesome things about this too is native tracking protection. So I can add this on, and then there's multiple different services. So, hey, I use Windows. I want to block those tracking. Oh, I have an Apple device. I want to block that. Oh, I have a Samsung device. I want to block those tracking and privacy related requests. Maybe I have an Amazon Alexa. I don't want that sending traffic to, and what these ones are doing is these are tailored to the privacy and security aspect of like sending log data and so forth. Same thing with Roku as well. You can also allow affiliate links and tracking links. So this will break the links, like when you get an email that says, hey, you get 50% off, click on this link to claim it. If you do want to use that, then you're most likely going to have to enable allow affiliate and tracking links, which is a love-hate relationship, I think. So I have it disabled personally, but what I do is I just manually approve it. And now going off of that, and then also these filter lists, now there's not going to be anything in here, but now if you do get something blocked, then you come over to the logs in here, and then it'll actually say in red on the left-hand side, like, oh, this was denied. And then you can actually approve things in manually. So if you're on a mobile device going through a game or something like that, and it stops working or it won't let you play the game, then you may have to come in here, the logs, and unblock one of those domains that were blocked. So definitely something to consider. You'll also have access to like the analytics. You can also go into the settings, and you can also select. One of the other key things I do in the settings is you do have an option on where your log data is saved. You could disable all of the log data to where none of the logs are saved. The IP addresses aren't saved, and so forth. It will disable analytics, but if you choose to, you can do that. So that way there's 0 logs at all. And you can also opt to have that data stored in Switzerland as well. So definitely some pretty awesome stuff. You also have like parental controls here too, which like the parental controls, you can block apps. So you don't want Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or whatever else on here operating through, then you can go through and add these services as well. You can also add categories of websites as well. So there's like 4 or 5 of these different ones that I personally put on my list here. Again, these are going to break entire services or categories, but it definitely depends on your preference. Another thing here too is enforcing safe search. So you can actually make it to where like Google has safe search enforced. You can even enforce YouTube restricted mode, which blocks embedded mature videos and being watched on other websites. So that means that they have to access it through the YouTube website, and like anything that's not made for children is restricted. I think it also disables comments as well, so they can't leave comments. But I'm going to go ahead and transition away from this for a moment, and then let me know what you guys think. I'm going to go ahead and catch up on chat. I know that there's probably a ton of stuff I missed here. Yeah, CyberCycle mentioning about Cloudflare being the fastest. I talked about AdGuard there. Vince popped in. CyberCycle. Yeah, and so Jeffrey does mention AdGuard does require tweaking, and sometimes you have to unblock a lot of sites. And honestly, I think that's going to be the case for most of it. The difference is I believe NextDNS is going to be the easiest. AdGuard is going to be the next, but with more customization. And then PiHole is going to be the most time consuming. I remember when I first set up PiHole for ad blocking, and I just added everything, and it broke everything. And then it took me hours of going to different websites and so forth, just unblocking things to get, basic functions to work again. Because I didn't even know what list was making the problem. Let's see. And yeah, that's the other thing too, is you can make an exemptions list. And so you can make, you have your, I can pull it up here actually. So you have your deny list, and you also have your allow list. So we do have the block list here on the privacy side, But then also we have our deny and our allow list. And so that's what the options are when you look at your log data is like, let's say, oh, I'm trying to access this website, but it's not loading. The first thing that I would be doing is going to my NextDNS, looking at the logs and being like, oh, this website's being blocked for some reason. Well, let's go ahead and add it to the allow list. Or if there's some type of tracking link or something like that that I want to block in the future, then I go through and add that on here. So you can manually add one by one, but it does not provide you an option to add your own list. Whereas AdGuard and PiHole allow you to create your own list, and you do not have to add that one by one. Although tailoring is going to be required. And also another thing, like I was saying, is with the block list, I would start small and then just add a couple on at a time for the average user, just because it can become quite a pain to enable a bunch of different lists and then have to figure out what the hell's going wrong. Yeah, and correct. Yeah, so not only can you do, so you can do the dynamic DNS as well, which like 8-bit says is no IP currently for that. Yeah. Josh asks, is the routable for the whole network the way you can configure PiHole? Yes. So you can set up PiHole to actually be your I'm lost for words. Let me pull it up. So you can actually set up PiHole to actually configure the actual local network itself as well, to do your local addressing. And then you can force it. And so like in the router settings, you can actually disable the DNS server and so forth. And the PiHole can take over for the local addressing. And that's one of the things I love about PiHole is the fact that not only then is my my everything handled through the PiHole itself, but then also that's encrypted to some random server in Germany that has no logs or anything else, that's owned by a single individual and not a corporation, and so forth. Forwarder. 8-bit mentions I used that years ago, worked very well for years. Which part did you use for years? Can you ingest NextDNS log data into a local SIM? I don't believe you can. So it's not something that I've looked into at depth. I do know that they do have an API that you may be able to leverage for your log data, and you can export it manually. But I don't believe that that's like set up for that. So you can do that for PiHole, and also I'm pretty confident you can do that with AdGuard. I don't believe you can do that with NextDNS though. I do consider NextDNS to be like, they have some really awesome features and so forth, but it's not very big on customization in my opinion. But yeah, so that pretty much covers it. So I walked through on the panel on NextDNS. Definitely check that out and so forth. And also, like I said before, we start bringing it to an end here as well. On the actual first page that you go to, it's going to give you all of these addresses that you may need. But the biggest thing here is that it's going to give you walkthroughs step by step for whichever platform you're on. You got an iPhone, here you go. You got a router, check this out. Like it literally gives you a step by step for each platform that you're utilizing and how to set that up. So, and then we also talked a little bit about the DOT versus DOH as well. Personally, for privacy, I do prefer DOH just because then it's kind of like security with obscurity, because like, oh, you know, you're sending all of this traffic to nextdns.io, you know, or whatever. Like, yeah, we totally don't know what that is, but still, especially among all the other traffic. Yeah, I don't remember the terminology offhand. But yeah, so with PiHole, you can route all of the traffic through that PiHole and enforce it network-wide. It can also handle the local DNS addressing. And personally, I think that PiHole is actually pretty easy to set up. So you just download it, you set it up on a USB or otherwise, and you could plug it in and go. So it requires very little configuration on the command line at least, and then you have to figure out what the address of it is. And so like I just sign into my router and then I can see, oh, I have this new device here. Well, that must be the PiHole. Let's connect to it and see if that's it. Maybe we'll do a walkthrough of that one day. I did want to also do an actual walkthrough of downloading a Linux distro and then also putting that on a USB drive and going and starting the process for installation. Yeah, and TechRicky says forwarder is correct. So we do have multiple confirmations. But yeah, if you guys have any other questions or anything else, definitely drop that in chat real quick. I'm going to stay on for another minute or two, and then we'll bring this to a complete end. Definitely also hop into the Discord server if you guys have any questions. If I don't know something, I'm positive somebody else around the community does. There's so much broad knowledge out there. You just got to ask. And also, if you guys aren't too confident with going through and setting this up manually, they do have the walkthroughs here. But you really can just download the apps on the app stores as well. Not only, they have it for all of the platforms as well. So let's see here. So not only can you download it, I know that they have an Android app. They have a Windows app as well. So see NextDNS for Windows. And then also they have an ISO app that you can download too. So I personally don't use the apps just because I feel it's unnecessary, because it is pretty straightforward to go through and set this up. But, maybe you prefer to just run the apps. Something is better than nothing. And like this makes a pretty significant difference in your footprint, I would say. Especially in today's world, it's all about data minimization. Yes, there's all kinds of data breaches out there and so forth, but it's all about data minimization. And then also a lot of these different services like the ISPs, they do sell your information on what websites you're going to, when you're active, and so forth as well. So definitely stuff to consider. And that's where just implementing some basic stuff like this, is it going to have a massive, huge impact on your privacy and security? Probably not. It is going to definitely reduce ads. It's going to reduce a lot of spam on websites itself. I see a lot cleaner view for a lot of websites as well. You do have the offset of having to go into the logs and allow things through manually from time to time. And then also it does at least hide the traffic that you have. So yeah, it's definitely a really good, easy step that anybody can walk through. This is a pretty simple thing. I mean, with that said though, if you guys do come across issues, definitely reach out, drop it in chat and so forth. Because I mean, it may look simple at first, but also if you've never done it before, like I said, if I'm working on somebody's device, a family relative or otherwise, like I'm setting up a new device for them, one of the first things I do once I get into the actual Windows account is go and set up Cloudflare, just because I know how quick and easy it is. I just go to the settings real quick, type in 1.1.1.1 and send it. And then they never worry about it ever again unless Cloudflare goes down, like we've had in recent history. Same thing with new devices as well. If I get a new device, one of the first things I'm doing is setting that up. Worst case scenario for Cloudflare, just because it's so easy to remember too. Google also has one too, which I believe is 8.8.8.8. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and bring this to an end. Thank you guys for tuning in and joining me along the way. Again, I can't stress it enough. Hop into the Discord server for outside of the streams and so forth. GRC Mafia, I look forward to tomorrow. Tomorrow we did add on one at 11 o'clock because we did not finish that CSF compliance yet. And then we do have our primary meeting at 6 p.m., which is going to be with Evan presenting about cybersecurity on a shoestring. He's going to be dropping tons of information, a lot of actionable stuff, and a lot of resources based on like what area you want to focus on, where you want to upskill, and so forth. It's going to be a very information-heavy session, and I'm probably going to have to rewatch it just because of the amount of information that's going to be shared with it. But thank you guys. Have a great rest.